Hello and welcome everyone to another puzzle challenge video with chessuniversity.com. This is Ryan Murphy, and today we have our final intermediate puzzle of the week, where it's white to play and win. White already has a pretty good position, just strategically, but there's a tactical knockout, and if you find it, you can post it on the official page at chessuniversity.com, which I will leave a link for in the description. If you put your answer there before the solution post goes up tomorrow, you can get reward points on your account. So I encourage people to give that a look. And with that, as usual, I'll start back at the beginning and see how we got to this critical moment in this game. This was played on chess.com between Grandmaster Hakobian and a player named Liu. And the game began with d4, e6. Knight f3, d5, c4, knight f6, knight c3. So we have some kind of Queen's Gambit declined by a different move order. Bishop to b4, bishop g5, looking into a Rogozin, h6, and then white takes on f6 and plays e3. And even though black has the bishop pair now, the queen on f6 is not exactly ideally placed. You know, the bishop on c8 has its typical problems that you see in the Queen's Gambit declined, where it's a bit hemmed in by the pawn, so it's going to take more time to develop. And yeah, white's basically hoping to use the extra time they're going to have to put pressure on the queen side. Moves like this, and the queen coming out either to b3 or a4 or even c2. And then eventually they'll try to open up the c-file and create pressure this way. So it is definitely a legit way to play. Castle, rook c1, b6, cd, ed. This is another typical thing. A lot of the times, as soon as black plays b6 and threatens to go bishop b7, to have this diagonal open for the bishop, that's normally when you'll notice white takes on d5 to force the pawn to the d5 square, because now either black will play b6 and put the bishop somewhere else, in which case b6 looks like a waste of time, or they will put the bishop on b7 and the bishop will be staring at a pawn forever. So it's a very nice little trick to keep in mind. So e takes d, queen to b3, putting pressure. Bishop takes c3. Not really sure if black should give up their bishop pair, because that's really the only good thing about their position. Move like queen e7 or queen d6 is maybe a slightly more testing way to try to hold on to the bishop, but then you got to worry about the move a3. Yeah, it's tricky. Maybe queen d6, and then if a3, after being provoked, you can take, or you can maybe play bishop a5. That looks kind of scary. Maybe here it makes more sense to try to take. And you can try to hold on in this position, although it's not the most pleasant thing ever. Anyway, bishop takes c3 without provocation. Queen takes c3, c6 directly. Bishop to d3, bishop to b7, knight e5. This keeps this knight from being able to move, because then there would be a fork. Queen to d6, castles, knight d7 now, and takes b4. And this position is pretty unpleasant for the black side, primarily because the bishop on b7 has very little hope. It's blocked in by the pawns. The move b4 fixes it, so it becomes very difficult for black to achieve the pawn break, pawn to c5. And there's not really a target in white's position that black can play for, aside from this move b4. So black's next move is very logical. They play a5, trying to open up lines. And white just goes ahead and plays the move a4. And the point is that if takes, which is probably what should be done, just to have the half-open file here for pressure against a4, this would still be unpleasant. The one nice thing we can say about black's position is they will be able to make this happen, trying to exchange the light square bishops. And a position like this, actually, black shouldn't be in any trouble at all. b6 is guarded. They're ready to double the rooks. They already have Luft for their king over on h7. Both sides have weaknesses, so this should be relatively balanced. And white doesn't have time, obviously, to take on b6, because this bishop on d3 is actually hanging. White could defend it, but that's going to lead to basically the same thing we were just looking at. Takes, and black can prepare to just either bring the rooks and be solid over here, or they can even try to double. So anyway, that was probably the way to go for black, to try to equalize. But after this, white gets in b5, c5, with a set of trades, and now this pawn gets blockaded on d5, which means this bishop is just like entombed forever. Notice there's never any bishop a6 trades anymore because of the pawn structure. It's just a very unpleasant position to play. Probably black needs to remaneuver the bishop to e6 and just try to hold, but it's not going to be fun. So queen e7, bishop to f5, g6, bishop back to d3, rook c8, and rook d1. White does not want to trade. They want things that can pressure the pawn on d5. And this move unfortunately blunders a pawn. Again, this is a blitz game, so these things happen. And now white, being up a pawn, is just kind of grabbing space and slowly squeezing. Rook f3. So now there's, not only is there the long-term threat of this pawn marching forward if enough things get traded, and of course the d5 pawn being a constant source of problems for black, but there's also the fact that now all these pawns have been provoked forward. The king is weak. Also, there's a lot of things pointing at the king's side, so white decides the fastest way to victory is probably just to go after the king, which is why they go for this rook lift idea. And now after f5, we have our key moment from the beginning of the video, where it again is white to play and win. So hopefully you guys can solve it, and I'll see everybody tomorrow for the next puzzle challenge video.